Hello, hello. I feel better. I made myself a lavender sandalwood cream for my face, and it is the best in the world. One cannot buy this anywhere. You can only make it yourself, and you have to use a lot of patience for this and put a lot of love in and love energy in it. You have to have good vibes while you do it. So yeah, it's a really, really amazing cream. Put the infinity sign into it. It's true. Yeah, it's not a joke. So anyway, I want to talk about true love, and I want to ask people what is true love and who do you think is my true love? So I think a lot of people know this, but tell me under the video. I'm not gonna give it away. I'll show you my true lover tomorrow. Okay? So I just want to know if you all have studied this a little bit and gotten deeper into it, and if you know the answer to this. Who is my true love? The love of my life. Okay, so before anyone comes to quick conclusions out of habit, society, brainwash, immersed in brainwash society, parents, friends, everyone, TV in the past, internet now, everything is just filled with this misinformation. Everyone talks about misinformation, everyone thinks they're unique and and I'm so unique. I figured this all out, but wait, this is all stuff that has been downloaded into you. Yeah. It's not thinking outside that football stadium. And so that's why I make these videos to get a little bit deeper into this material. This is called philosophy. All of this is falls under that headline, philosophy. All of this falls into it, and it's very important that people get into it now, that they really start to think about what is it, what is the meaning of life. You can also put this under my video. What's the meaning of life? What do you think is the meaning of life? So I want to hear what people say to this. Now there's no shame involved again, not coming to the conclusion of, oh, I better not say anything. What if I say something wrong? Okay, there is nothing wrong, even if it's a religious answer. This is where you're coming from. This is what you have learned. So let's get into this, and there's no shame. We already are loaded with shame, okay, in our whole bodies and brains and colon and all of that, and reproductive organs. Why do you think the C rate is so high? I don't even want to say the word. You know what I mean? It's shame, and shame is psychological toxicity, and that has been put into people. And there's also probably out of this energetic vibe has come pesticides. Nothing is disconnected from one another. This is all, it's a cascade of events that lead up from one another. If people are toxic in their brains, they create toxic materials, okay? And that's what they did in 1950, okay? And since then, the more it was used in agribusiness and sold to you in hardware stores and marketed to you, and everyone is using this and spraying it like there's no tomorrow, making sure that there's no tomorrow. okay, for any of us, for any living being, because the animals are dying from this, and bee populations dying out, which people don't understand any of these things. That's why these environmentalists, they must be crazy. No, if you study this a little bit, if you actually read books, you will not say that they're crazy. It's very easy to call someone crazy, if you don't read anything, and if you only get presented with Bible study, and believe me, the military preaches this because that's how they can keep people under their thumb, under control. It's mind control. That's what that is. And it's very simple. It's brainwashing and mind control. And they also have their little jokes about women and environmentalists, in their locker rooms. That enforces it some more. The anti-information, the stereotypes, and all of this. And then how can they, when they hear someone talk completely differently, how can they follow this? How can they even relate to that in the slightest bit? So, and I'm not shaming anyone. We have already been shamed. What the next step now is for us is to come out of that shame. And the way you do it is not by keeping this locked up, in a pressure cooker. Not by, it's not by the ego keeping this locked away from your consciousness. It has to come into your consciousness, and it can hurt, and shame might come up, but you have to know intellectually, at least cognitively, that that's just a feeling, okay, and that will pass. It's just important that people start to acknowledge, I have been bullshitted my whole life. So that's the recognition here. Meditate, and the feeling comes up, I have been major bullshitted by my parents, by everyone. But you know what? Those in turn had been also bullshitted, and that's been going on for generations. It's become a little bit better now. But I see again that there's a lot of people who get it, but then they make this major mistake, and they fall back into the shame cycle by shaming those who have not understood it yet. That will not teach anyone. It will just shame them right back into their old patterns and into their old hiding and denial and so on, and into their old religions. That's not going to make us take a leap forward in consciousness. Okay. So, and anyone who has watched my videos for more than 5 minutes, hopefully, will understand that I am not coming from a repetition of something else. I'm not coming from just a simple copying of something else or of a movement. Believe me, I don't belong to any movement. I make sure of that. I introspect a whole lot on this. I question myself. I question my motives, because I'm the last one who wants to bullshit myself. I have been bullshitted a lot, with a lot of bullshit in my life. Believe me, there's bullshit in Germany too. And there's bullshit in the so-called academic circles, societies, in the societies that in the very liberal, in the very educated societies, there's a whole lot of bullshit going on there as well, because the ego always tricks people into another loop. There's the loop again. It loops itself again. My father will say, for example, I'm understated. That statement right there is an overstatement. Or someone will say, which is a little bit more out in the open, a little bit more blunt. Someone will say, I'm enlightened. Okay, well, that's everyone would laugh about this immediately. Okay, that'll be very recognizable. But then there are gurus who they know better than to ever say they're enlightened, but they will make sure they rub it in. They make sure to. It could also be Christian ministers, and there are so many like sand at the beach. I tell you that. Christian ministers who have never read any books other than the Bible. And you think you can learn something from those people? Well, think again. They are also not humble, okay? But also the intellectual people are not humble either. They use shaming, they use their pride. It's the same thing. It's the same cycling after cycling of the ego that bites itself in the tail. Like it keeps on looping. And that's what we need to dissolve completely. We need to be normal. But what is normal again? Is to some people they cannot see through any of this, through the walls of that trap that they're in. So they think normal is where they are. What is really normal? Normal, not in the sense of norm, because that's not normal. That's not healthy. So normal in the sense of healthy, balanced, grounded. I'm fat. I can still tell you to lose weight. I am just a messenger. I am just as I always keep emphasizing, I am just a phone. I'm just a vessel to bring this message across. That's all it is. Fat and not balanced vessel, but I'm giving you a very pure message. That message is not my message. I carry that message because I believe in that message. It rings true to me. That's the one thing that is sane. Okay, the one thing that my lifetime work on myself has brought me a little bit more insight and more sanity. Yeah, that doesn't make me enlightened because there is no such thing as enlightenment at all. That would mean some kind of finality. I have understood it all. Now I'm omniscient. I've seen Indian gurus say something like, I think this is just, I can just shake my head over that. How someone could say something like this. And right there it should tell you, okay, this is not your guru, okay? There was a guru named Nisargadatta Maharaj, and he was a completely regular neurotic in a sense because he had a tobacco store. He was selling tobacco products, probably didn't even know at that time. It was somewhere in the 60s. Didn't know. At that time, they didn't even have a warning label. At that time, people didn't know about the dangers of it. He was smoking. I think I saw a photo the other day where he was actually lighting a cigar or something. And it's absolutely terrible. It's like that's anti-information right there. So, but he didn't know, and he was just a regular person, not balanced, just like I am fat and not balanced. So he had a tobacco store, which is absolutely terrible. But in the back of the tobacco store was a meditation room, and he was talking. He liked talking to his friends about philosophy, meditation, and what he has learned, and not just learned, but he really put it into action. He really tested it out for himself. That's what Jiddu Krishnamurti always talking about. When you learn something, don't just swallow it, hook, line, and sinker, but test it. Make sure that works. test it for yourself and see if this works. Test out and see um, if celibacy, for example, if that works, if this is a modality that works for us. It works for those people who don't have a sex drive. Okay, this is a rare condition in humanity that exists, and for those people, yeah, it's not a big deal. That's what they do all the time. Okay, but take someone who has a super mega sex drive. Okay? Someone who can't stand it. They're just constantly thinking about it and talking about it. Everything they hear it through the lens of sex, masturbation and stuff like that. So how can they be celibate? How is that going to work? Ajita Krishnamurti talked about it. He said there was a monk who came to him, and this monk had taken celibacy and being completely purifying and silencing his brain. He had taken that very seriously, and he really wanted to do it. But his sex drive was off the chart. So it kept coming back and coming back. That's a biological need. It's not just an addiction. It can become an addiction as well. But for men in particular, this is something burning. And I see this, and I'm not judging. I see this is biology. Okay? And I don't even blame people in my past. So I don't even blame them. Because they just didn't know better. Paul says they did know better. But I say they didn't. Paul thinks people can control this and can behave themselves and can put things into perspective, particularly when it comes to children, and there's so many children who are falling victims to this, and it ruins their lives completely. But apparently there are men who cannot, and when there is a taboo, as with the children, then the sex drive seems to, because they suppress it, so then it takes on another form. It takes on a monstrous urge, where it becomes so insanely bad that they can't stand it anymore, that they have to act it out. So and that's why there's an industry now of making sex dolls, including children's sex dolls. When I first saw that on Facebook, I thought this is not good, because then it kind of lures people even into this type of energetic realm, and I'm afraid it can. But there were people saying, if we don't put these children sex dolls out there, then they will take real children, or animal sex dolls. It's better to do that than on a real living being. And I agree. So, there are two sides to two angles that we can look at this situation. So, but when people have such an urge and they become a monk in particular, and I've seen one monk, I've seen a Buddhist monk, he looked like Tibetan. I've seen one at a spiritual fair, like a fair in downtown LA. There was this fair on the first level or something of a larger industrial building. It was indoors, and there were all kinds of different booksellers and therapy types of spiritual nature, new age type of fair. And I was running around with a jeans overall, and I wrote on the overall, "Vote for John Kerry." So that was back in somewhere, when was that, 2004 or something. But then Bush got elected again. But anyway, the people there none of these people really thought that was nice of me. John Kerry, well, that would cut off their business. Not good. So, business more important, right, than environmentalism for most people. So, right there, they want to be spiritual, yes, but business first. Anyways, this is pretty terrible. And there was this Buddhist monk, and he saw my John Kerry, self-made John Kerry bib, and he went, hey, hey, hey. And I was like, wow, one guy among 300 people or 400 people in this room. One guy gave me thumbs up, literally, on my John Kerry bib. So I went right over and I wanted to talk to him. And I told him what I'm doing as an activist. And suddenly he goes into a meditation and he is reciting a chant in Tibetan. I couldn't understand what it was about. It was probably like, I am celibate and I do not look at women and everything is well. I do not see this woman. Ta 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 ta. So anyway, something like this, And I was like, the what the F? And he's completely ignoring me right in the middle of me talking about my activism. And then later it dawned on me why he was probably doing this. And so this is, that is exactly what I'm talking about. It's this people, they suppress their nature, they suppress their urges, and when they suppress it, then this need takes on monstrous forms, and it becomes even more monstrous as time goes by. The more things are being repressed, like boobs are blended out, or someone is not even allowed to say fuck, that's being bleeped out, and I think they even blend out the mouse just in case someone can read the lip reading. And so everything nude is blended out. It's getting a little bit better now, finally. The new generations are finally stepping into different offices and institutions, thank goodness. But it's just like we need to become aware about this. If you have been drilled something, particularly from religions, that's why I say religions are adverse. It's just one more example. The Buddhist monk had been drilled into him his entire life, or the Dalai Lama. Same thing. The Dalai Lama is not on a higher plane than that Buddhist monk. I don't know where this Buddhist monk came from. Maybe he's some incarnation from a lineage too. I have no idea. But all of this, I feel like those are ideas for people. Even if there are lineages, that doesn't mean these people are special or something. A lineage of another like a student of life soul or something, that's not very high, but they think that is an amazing soul and is celebrated and worshipped because it's really just an idea in their minds. The greatest kings and monarchs have been stagnator souls. Those are the most frequent souls that we have here on this planet. So the stagnator souls, that's the everyday average person. So student of life is one step higher. A student of life is someone who has finally realized that maybe harboring this ego and allowing that to run their lives is not such a good idea, but they're still not advanced enough to have much deeper insights, and also to have the courage to abandon these habits that let the ego take off and run their lives. But at least they're a little bit more humble about things. The stagnator souls are those that, when they come into an existence, particularly if they come into a very cognitive existence, if they come into a cockroach existence, it is a very honest transition, and that's why I recommend it to them to do that, because you don't want to come right away into the existence of a much higher consciousness being, a much higher cognitive being, maybe not consciousness, but cognitive, a cognitive being, like a whale or a human or an elephant. So those are have very high cognition, and whales have the highest, okay, and elephants and humans are about on the same level. So they just have different modalities that they communicate with. They all have different modalities, the completely different way of living and perceiving, different sense. Elephants communicate through the feet, and they hear through the feet. The whales hear through echolocation, and we talk through sound and visualization, okay, and gravity also, living in gravity. It's all very difficult already, so that's why, but I think it's very important that we become aware of these things. And Nisargadatta Maharaj, he was just a lived a completely regular person's life, a very humble existence in India, on a very loud street with the tobacco store and that meditation room. And but people started to hear about him because of this very humble and honest man who really told them the truth about consciousness and existence in very humble words, in very unbloated words, and just as a matter of fact, as again, a vessel that gives the message of truth, even if the vessel himself or herself is not a god or a goddess in appearance or conduct even, So there are angel souls who have also gotten into mischief and stuff like this out of needs, out of not being completely aware, being brainwashed. There are living beings too, they can get into all of this. But the basic intent of their existence is to be there for others, is to make the world a better place. In most of those, it is completely unconscious, completely not, they do not know about it. That's why some people are surprised when I tell them that they are angel souls, and I see a lot of them, even among Christians, I say, take note of that word even, because most Christians are stagnator souls. So, but once in a while, someone is, even if they're totally brainwashed, but there is the actual energetic existence that they live is angel soul level and has the intent to help more from the soul plane than from the actual flesh body. The flesh body is brainwashed, has always heard that you shall not this or that, or this is dangerous, and even if it's irrational, they will, the entire package of their religion, so to speak, completely absorbed and not questioned. But they're still angel souls, because within that group, within that society that they converse, that's where they are doing good. That's where they are bringing things to forward. That's where they are making progress for that community. I, for example, don't have any contact to that community. I have contact to some individual people that approach me for various reasons, and I will take that as an opportunity, of course, to help with words, to bring sense into their lives and to give them wholesome food for thought, wholesome love, not empty love, not like most people, they just want for themselves, something to snatch something up for themselves, attention, money, always tricking someone. And it is me, as the giver that I am, I give you my entire chocolate here. So it is me who, for example, would never find, that's what it feels like, would never find someone. For example, there's this guy on Facebook who had been after me for years, and the conversation, off and on, I was talking to him, and it was flattering to a point, but then if I say something that goes against his ego, like if I question him on anything, he would completely fly off the handle, become nasty. So then I will freeze the conversation, and he does not want to hear about this because it would bring up shame, and the shame, and I know about the male ego and the male shame. They have been shamed their whole lives. And this amazing nutritionist I was listening to earlier was talking about, absolutely fascinating. Paul sent me the link so I can watch the video. I will probably talk about that in future videos, because I was amazed to hear someone else calling the kid by the name. And there aren't very many people who do this, who call that gnome by the name Rumpelstilzchen, and then he steps on his own beard in the process of being discovered. And that's kind of like that guy on Facebook. I'm not going to name any names whatsoever, but he's from the United States, I think he's from California, and I leave it at that. An older guy, and particularly when they're older, they cannot have a woman particularly shine the spotlight on them, on their ego and on the bullshit that they're doing. So that's very painful, obviously. But then again, I have feelings too. I can't let someone just verbally abuse me because I happened to step on their little ego. So all of this, and then you have these very humble people, sometimes very humbly living people, that would never harass or sexually harass a woman or bloat themselves up in front of other, or peacock themselves in any way. So Nisargadatta Maharaj, he taught humbleness, and he really taught the meaning of life. People started to flock to him, pilgrimage to him, from the United States. And there's another guru, I'm not going to name names right now, it's just, I don't want to put shame on people, and the feeling of shame again, which would come up. This is just a general message about it, that we become more aware about it. This one guru, who also from the United States teaches, and he went over there to Nisargadatta and to learn from him. At least he explained what happened there, and that he ended up just putting a label on Nisargadatta, kind of like, my guru is hopeless. It's not, I am, maybe there's something wrong with me that I don't get it. No, it's that guru. The guru must be That's just hopeless or whatever. I don't. He's crazy. That's a crazy. Crazy is always wonderful. With the word crazy, we can close every drawer and every file away, so we don't have to deal with this. So we don't actually have to introspect. And I see this entire thing with that guy, with that guru from the United States. I see what's going on with him. He's a stagnator. I've contacted him before. I wanted to test him. So a clear stagnator. I asked him if he would run after a puppy into a busy street to bring him back to safety. And only the secretary could lower herself down to write back. He doesn't have time for this. And obviously he told her what to say, and she said, "You need to start from the beginning of the lectures." Like in a very slimy, polite, but the hate was right there, the hate vibes. Like, you better start from scratch. You haven't gotten it at all. It's like projection. Yes, projecting to me that whoever asks such a question, the ego becomes inflamed. Right away, the ego, the old shame, the fear of looking bad, the fear of being a loser comes up in him, and he has to turn it around and project it back out to me, so that he doesn't have to take any accountability. He never has to look at himself, and he's trying to teach that very thing. So yes, this is, I don't hate him. I feel sorry for those people. I feel bad that they are so caught up in that ego loop and the shame loop and all of this, and this wanting to be perfectionist, wanting to be perfect. They can only be perfect, or they will look bad and the shame will come up. So, and out of this, what the nutritionist guy says, out of this, people will sabotage themselves so that they have an excuse to say, for other people, to say, "Oh, this is why I couldn't get into it," or "This is why I couldn't study. I had carpal tunnel syndrome," or something. Like an excuse. They generate an excuse. They sabotage themselves. They fall very often, for example. All of this is not a coincidence. Someone who falls a lot is in a sabotaging loop. And that usually comes from the ego. The ego wants to preserve itself, wants to stand grandstand in brilliance towards the outside world, because that's what they have been drilled with, and that's become their identity. And the shame is so threatening, the looming shame that can be there at any moment. If someone looks at them funny, the shame comes up. This can enter into schizophrenic proportions, and because of this, a lot of people don't even start anything positive for their lives. But because of this, people don't even want to go on raw food, because also mainly because they feel like their maleness is threatened by this. But also the ones who are serious and want to do it. Some people who are told by their doctors that if they don't get rid of the cholesterol, they're going to have a heart attack. So the doctors usually don't recommend vegan, because they have never learned holistic healing. They can only prescribe more poison, so that people will suffer and will pollute the environment and all of this. And poisons do not heal people. Oh, my dad's taking cholesterol lowering medication. It's all terrible, instead of going whole food, and quitting the meat in particular. If you just quit all the meats, that will also help. But anyway, it's already getting late. But yeah, so all these lies, it's always lies after lies after lies. If these people could just acknowledge, okay, what I'm doing here is I'm bullshitting myself with this ego and with this pride and with the shame. I'm just bullshitting myself and I'm sabotaging myself. Why can't I listen to this woman? Why can't I vote for a woman for president? Why can't I just acknowledge, man, don't take yourself so seriously. The world doesn't come to an end if you listen to someone, or particularly if you listen to a woman or a hippie woman or whatever, That doesn't castrate you, it doesn't castrate your ego. It just brings people, it just creates harmony, It just creates insight, and it creates friendship and real friendship and honesty and peace and health, and the blood pressure is calmed down, and if you don't have to prove yourself anymore. So food for thought again. Take care.